Dear trading friends, what kind of market are we dealing with right now? It's completely driven by news. We'll be analyzing that again today. I've picked out a few things. Updated liquidation heat map. Of course, we'll also look at the level 2 data to see how many are currently in short positions. Super interesting because we're talking about billions here, and that's just on OKX and Binance without even seeing what's on the other exchanges. And of course, once again, the Coinglass legend. Because there too, you can see some very, very exciting things regarding the liquidation heat map, but not just the liquidation heat map. If you can remember the last videos, when I pull up the hyperliquid liquidation map, that one big player I kept showing in the last 2 videos, I've marked it here as well, had a liquidation of 1,030 bitcoins at just over 76,000 US dollars. And we talked about it. Will the institutional players and market makers try to push the price there to liquidate him? And yes, that's exactly what happened. Where can you see that? I'll really be recording the tutorial very soon. But you could see it here, that at 76,000 we had a very, very long line where those 1,030 bitcoins were shown as a short liquidation. He was actually taken out with this wick here. After that, there was a small one with the subsequent new rise when the news came out that apparently everything is fine now. Before we get into the chart analysis, just a quick update because something has happened again, and this time it's more on the negative side. Because on April 17th, so yesterday, Trump posted that the Strait of Hormuz is now completely open and that the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon has come into effect. So that was the news yesterday. After that, the markets closed. So what has happened now? The Strait of Hormuz is currently closed again due to US piracy. At least that's what they're saying now, at least according to Iran. So what exactly is this about? Because here it's briefly shown the Strait of Hormuz. And the situation is that ships haven't been able to pass through. Now Iran has said, okay, after the agreement with the USA, it's fine, they can pass through again. But only commercial ships, nothing military. But the USA has said they will continue to monitor the Strait of Hormuz and will still somehow block or stop ships that have apparently paid something to Iran. So now Iran is saying, no, if we open up, you can't keep blocking further down. That's not acceptable. And for this reason, the strait is now closed again. Accordingly, Bitcoin has also started its first correction. But now if we go further into the chart analysis, and I'm going to turn off the hyperliquid liquidation indicator again now. I just wanted to share that with you because there was still the suspicion that the institutional investors would hunt him down. And yes, it actually happened. He simply got 1,030 bitcoins liquidated. I feel sorry for him, but that's how the game goes. Otherwise, we still have this upward trend channel where we had the rejection last time, but we also had the liquidation up here again. I've drawn that again in a second chart. It's exactly this one here. And here's what we have. I know it looks confusing now, but all these red boxes are simply large liquidation clusters that are currently still open. But with this liquidation, we simultaneously retested the bear flag top. So this exact ascending trend rejection that we see here happened at the same time as the liquidation, which was up here at around 78,000 US dollars. All of that was liquidated, there was a rejection, and at least for now, the price continued downward. At this point in time, if we briefly turn on the Fibonacci lines, we can see that the current support is also happening at the 0.5 Fibonacci level. For me, this is still not a new short position that I would enter right now. I did enter a small risk short position at just under $78,000. That position is currently in profit on Bitunix, but it really is just a risk position because we are still in an upward trend. For me, it really doesn't make much sense to try to go against the trend here, even if we have an even more pronounced divergence. Just take a look at this. I already thought it would have to be over by now, but the price keeps rising here. We'll take another look at that in a clearer chart here. So exactly this here. If I remove the trend channel now, the price keeps rising here, while the RSI fails to make a higher high. And that's really, really interesting to see. Even when we look at the MACD, we see something similar at the current moment. We have a flat MACD with a rising price. For me though, it's now slowly but surely becoming a sign that we could be seeing a midterm reversal to the downside. Let's take a look at this right away, because what's really, really interesting here is that if I zoom into the weekly chart, there's a liquidation that's super interesting. And I think it's on the weekly chart that things are about to get very exciting. Because if we now get a retest with this breakout from the downtrend of the all-time high, which I already showed you, things are going to get really interesting. Because in that area, if we now go further down due to the negative news that might put pressure on the market on Monday, we could fall into price regions around 70,000 US dollars. And I'll show you that now on the liquidation heat map. Those were the 2 weeks. This is exactly the area, 70,000 down to 69,700 or even 500 US dollars. And that could actually bring us into the price regions of these areas. If everything goes well, this might really just lead to a retest from this breakout, and then we could see new highs afterwards. That would finally be a correction from this bearish divergence that we can take advantage of. At the same time, if I include this now and we look at a larger chart, so actually from this level that we have here, because if we go in here now and look again, we've already reached the target levels here after this bullish breakout we had. These were the target levels. We even shot beyond that. This means that if a correction comes in now, we could draw the Fibonacci from down here, and that's where it gets very interesting, because exactly where the liquidation is, we see that the 0.618 Fibonacci would be located there. That means this alignment would be very interesting for me if we correct downwards, so that you could try to enter a new long position there. But right now I'm extremely cautious, extremely driven by news, and there's a pump. What if extremely bad news comes out again now and we drop even lower because of it? Because we also see in the other chart that, of course, in the lower regions around 66,000 US dollars, there is still plenty of liquidity lying there. Despite all that, I don't want to be too bearish. For this reason, this is a very, very valid level for me, which I will try to long again, but I will also try a new short. Why am I not entering a short yet? We are still in this bullish trend. This trend channel that I just showed you, as long as nothing breaks there, or what is even more interesting to me, if we see at least on the 4-hour or 1-hour chart, then it starts to get interesting. If we break this level here, then we would make a new low, which could lead to another break in structure to the downside. And I'll just turn that on for a moment. If we really do get a correction down there now, the question is whether we'll go all the way down right away. But for me, what would be interesting is a small correction so that we have a break in structure, a slight recovery, pick up new liquidity, and then go down afterwards. And if we see something like that, then those would be areas where I would say, depending on the Fibonacci level where it comes back in, I would try to open a new short position. It could then look something like this, where we say we go down about this far. We'll also see how far it really goes down. Just below that, I think, is at 73,000 US dollars. That's exactly the area. This area here, right around 73,000 US dollars, would be a liquidation. This means if I place the Fibonacci roughly here where the liquidation is, that would already be a break in structure, and we could expect a small recovery here, which would move into the Fibonacci levels so that one could enter a short position there. For me, in this bullish trend, I am currently not entering them, even though we've already seen liquidations and so on. But if Bitcoin wants to pump, if Ethereum wants to pump, whatever the case, I don't want to be too active in shorting into the trend. So now let's look at the current moment. But now if we take a look at the whale orders and large trades, guys, quite a significant amount has come in lately for Bitcoin. If we look here now, all these short positions that came in between about 75,000 and 76 and 77,000 US dollars are currently, at least in part, at a loss. But if we now look at what short positions were triggered here, and this is really interesting, here you can see sell orders filled 4 billion at Binance and 2.77 billion at O. So nearly 7 billion US dollars are currently in short positions. And we're not even talking about the positions still waiting above us, because there are another 2 billion at Binance and 1 billion at OKX waiting. And that doesn't even include all the other exchanges like PIONEX, Bitget, Bybit, and so on. So all of these are still missing here. This means there are currently a lot of people in short positions here, both those that have already been filled and those still waiting. So it will be interesting to see whether all of these billions really get liquidated, or if this is actually enough sell volume to push the price down further. That's all for now about Bitcoin. Very briefly about the positions. On PIONEX, almost all the bots are currently in profit. Really, almost all of them at the moment. Even these ones with Ethereum have now gone further into profit. And as for the CoinM bots, there are already plenty of profits there, which is really very, very nice to see. The only two that are at a loss are the Ethereum short, but I'm going to keep that one open for now. It also has a very good range because I strongly suspect a correction, but also my S&P 500. Unfortunately, that one is still at a loss. Despite everything, the S&P 500 is so strong. If we take a quick look, it's overbought, especially if we look at the RSI. It's just incredible. And now I've also read that this pump, the S&P 500, apparently hasn't happened in 20 years. Accordingly, even though this short position is shown here as if the stop loss has been hit, no, it hasn't. This is exactly the position I'm continuing to build up. In the last video, I already showed that I went short here. I secured my position here again before it gets liquidated. And in this case, I place the next order before my liquidation price so that I can build up my position a bit here and gradually push my average selling price higher so that in the event of a correction, should that happen, and I still believe we will correct, the bad news could perhaps trigger it. But I could also be completely wrong, but this is how I'm proceeding at the moment so that hopefully I can end up in profit with this position. Almost all the trading bots are currently closed when it comes to DCA, except for the one Bitcoin DCA bot, which only has one safety order anyway. That's actually a DCA bot where I gradually accumulate Bitcoins and it has a 200% take profit set. And apart from that, we still have the DCA bot open in short at 4 times. That's also quite interesting, but for me right now, it's actually enjoyable. My Ethereum position is doing very well, as you can see here. So 15%, I've generated almost 1 Ethereum now, and with XRP I'm minimally at a loss. Solana, I have now reduced it to just above break-even. Now it's only 2 Solana in size. If there's a dump, I'll compound it again, but the Bitcoin position is also currently nicely in profit. If we take a look, it's just under 9% as far as the CoinM trade is concerned. But if we go further, let's take a quick look at Ethereum, because Ethereum currently looks like a super interesting level to me. With Ethereum, we don't see anything different when we look here either. Exactly the same sign when it comes to this bearish divergence. I also found something here that I forgot to mention earlier with Bitcoin. We've had similar scenarios before. The price stayed at these highs for a very, very long time, and here too, the price made another move up before a larger correction happened. And also in this area, just like it is now, if we look at what the RSI is doing at the current moment, it's around the 75 mark. Here too, we were around the 75 mark. Here as well, there was at least a correction, which I'm still anticipating at the moment, so that we can also pick up liquidity below us. The largest liquidity is currently at around 2,160 and a bit below that in this area here. What I have also prepared, which is very interesting to see, is if we take the last low we had after the long consolidation before the bull market started, and now we've broken below it again. You can see here the point of control at the current time was actually exactly the point where Ethereum also formed its top at this moment. The question is, can we get above it, above this point of control, above this extreme volume that we have built up here on the left? I'm just checking if you can see that clearly. Yes. In this case, with this volume here, will we manage to get above it, or will this actually become our rejection zone, causing us to go further down again? That remains the exciting question here, because even if we draw this in again now, this flag top, are we going to see a new expansion here with a small breakout in this case, or will we even rise a bit more so that this becomes an ascending rejection trend, since we still have a bit of liquidation above as well? From a Fibonacci perspective, that would be a very, very interesting level if we also include the overall correction level here, because then it would be roughly the 0.618 as a support zone, which could be hit here. Because with Ethereum as well, it's now the case that we've already triggered the target levels up here in this area. Little by little, we've triggered the 1.618 and the 1.809, almost the 2. Target levels, which means with the divergence moving into the target levels, I could actually imagine that this could be the next possible setup where I would say I'll risk a long position if we should reach the 0.618. And it's no different here if I turn this off again or if we switch to a cleaner chart, because here too we still have an upward trend, as you can see here. Although the RSI is starting to weaken and the MACD is also starting to weaken. But here too, it's no different. Only when we get this break here, just like with Bitcoin. That means if we break this low to the downside and then have a recovery to initiate another correction in order to pick up this liquidation down here, which I mentioned is in this area, that would be interesting for me again. A similar example that we go down somewhere, have a recovery, and I will enter a short position around the 0.5 and 0.618 levels, provided we don't continue to rise, in order to short further down and then try to enter a new long position there. Of course, provided that not much changes in the liquidation landscape. And with Ethereum as well, if we look into the liquidation heat map, we see exactly this level of 2,154 on a 2-week basis, just as I mentioned. But if we look at the smaller time frame, it looks very interesting because we have plenty of liquidations both above and below. Take a look at this. So here a massive amount of Ethereum is being placed in long positions, but at the same time also in shorts. And accordingly, I can imagine that we'll have another Monday roller coaster so that we trigger liquidations, trigger more liquidations, and only then does the market make its decision. Because now it would of course be interesting if we rise again, trigger this large liquidation, maybe even a bit above it, and then go down afterwards. Because with Ethereum as well, if we look into it, there are plenty of short position orders in there that have been filled. If we look here, just take a look, but also long positions at this point in time. Take a look at this, just the long positions that have been placed today on this Saturday. Let's analyze this. If we look here now, which short orders have been filled? We can see that here. Under sell filled, we see 2.39 billion at OKX and 3 billion here at Binance, not even counting the other exchanges. And by now, almost 2 billion in long positions filled at OKX. And here as well, 2.56 billion in long positions filled at Binance. However, we can see that overall, there are currently more short orders waiting, which are still open, than long orders at this point in time. But don't forget, it's Saturday. Of course, many large institutions are missing, as they are not involved yet. But if we look further down, we can already see a few clusters down here, which correspond to the larger liquidation I showed earlier on a 2-week basis, what we still have lying below us. Exactly this area, 2150 to 2160. Where was that? That is exactly this area here, where large market participants have placed their orders should we move into that area. But what's really interesting with Ethereum again, 1 week guys, we now have such strong liquidity above us that I really wouldn't be surprised if we pump again here. Take a look at this. Don't forget all this liquidity that's here. Well, it's not actually liquidity, but the liquidations that are here. Of course, all of this has been triggered by massive short orders here. Now the question is, are we actually going to take that out? Because with Bitcoin, we also have a similar situation at 78,000 where in a shorter time frame, there's a lot of liquidations piling up again. Or is that actually enough at this point to push the market further down? Because the cluster does look very interesting, but we must not forget that from 2,324 down to 2,153, that's where the big cluster lies on a 2-week basis. We now have a lot of liquidations spread out there, which would mean that if everything is cleared out down here, thousands of traders would be liquidated, not just a small portion up here. So for me, it's very, very exciting to keep watching. I'm holding back a bit for now, waiting for the next move for a short position in both Bitcoin and Ethereum, as I said, if we really see a structural break here. Very briefly in conclusion, because I didn't show it earlier, I think I forgot to mention it in the liquidation heat map. I'm not sure if I showed it at the beginning of the video. Right where we now have the rejection in Bitcoin, if we look again, that's also where we previously had the liquidation cluster. So in this area, there are still plenty of liquidations lying around. At around 78,500 US dollars, maybe a bit above that, I can move it up a little higher. That would be in this area here, so above this high here is where the next liquidations would be located. I'll save that right away as well. Accordingly, when we look at this, we now have the opportunity to see the next liquidation clusters here. Of course, I'll keep you up to date in the Signal group. Otherwise, I would of course be happy. Feel free to subscribe and like my channel, and we'll see each other again next time.